Not you. We good, Dave? Well, welcome. It is a slightly chillier day. Wasn't too bad today. I'll take the 70 degrees over the 40 anytime. That's just me. So, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do our offering, and then we'll give a couple announcements, and then we'll go right into our study. Heavenly Father, thank you for an opportunity we have to give and to invest in the kingdom. And we pray that you would take our offering, use it for your glory. It's in your name we pray. Everybody said, amen, amen. A couple of announcements. This week is the parade for the city, and so we are a part of that. If you are able to join us, which it'd be lovely if you could, please. You can ride a bicycle, you can ride four-wheeler, whatever you want to, unicycle, wheelchair, whatever works, right? You want to be at the fairgrounds no later than 6 o'clock, because that's when the roads start closing off. It'd be tough to get there. And so if you can get there, you call the church, or you can send a message to Mary. She's kind of coordinating on all that, so that way you can be a part of that. Saturday then is our candy drop. We're dropping candy from a helicopter. I forget how many pounds of candy we have. I think we have somewhere around, I think we were shooting for 100 gallons of candy, which I have no idea how much that weighs, but a lot of candy is going to be dropped from the sky on Saturday. So if you are able to be here and be a part of that, and maybe just help out as we are ministering to the kids and the families in our community, that'd be really, really awesome. Please contact Amber and let her know you were willing to help. Some of the help she needs is just simply, as people are coming in, getting them registered, finding out their name, registering their information, getting them signed up, getting them wristbands so they know when they're going to run out in the field and get the candy, little things like that, but they'd make a huge difference on the event and what we're able to do. All right? Are you ready? I have good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. We are not going to make it to our two witnesses tonight. I know I was trying, but there is so much we need to cover. And so here's the good news. We're only going to cover 2 verses, but I think you're really going to like it, okay? So is that okay? Then next week is verse 3. That's our 2 witnesses. So let's go together. Let's have our chapter overview and just kind of a brief kind of from the air look, and then we're going to kind of zoom in. So chapter 11 overview. The temple is measured. The outer court is given to the Gentiles. It lasts 42 months, which is 3.5 years. That should be familiar with you, because 3.5 years is how long? Half of what? The tribulation, okay. Then the 2 witnesses are empowered for 1,260 days. That's interesting because that's also 3.5 years. The place is Jerusalem. The time is the first half of the 70th week of Daniel. In chapters 11 through 14, we get an amplification of the elements. Note there's a distinction between Jew and Gentiles reappearing, suggesting the Old Testament dispensation. This chapter begins on earth but ends in heaven, and we'll see that in verse 19. And then we need to remember that chapters 11 through 14, and this is kind of different for us because in the past, the parentheses between the 6th and 7th event has been either a chapter long or a section long. Chapter 11, 14 is the pause between the 7th trumpet. Okay, so remember that. And the 7th trumpet will signal the end, will signal the completion of the wrath of God. We'll see that in 15 verse 1. And is that the midpoint of Revelation? We'll find out. So it's important to remember our guiding principles in interpreting prophecy. You guys remember this, hopefully? Especially the fundamental guideline that we interpret things literally whenever possible. It's not only possible in this chapter, but it is necessary. Let's read. We're going to read the New American Standard Bible today. So then there was given to me a measuring rod like a staff, and someone said, "Get up and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship in it. Leave out the courtyard, which is the outside of the temple, and do not measure it, because it has been given to the nations, and they will trample the holy city for 42 months. So we see first a measuring stick, measuring rod. It's usually a reckoning or a measuring or the equivalent of being claimed to it. Now, so we're going to look up some Greek words here. So the word temple has two words. Okay, the first one is naos, and it's the temple, a shrine, the part of the temple where God himself dwells or resides. It's a sacred abode, sacred home, the place of divine manifestation. The other word is hirion, and that's the whole temple, the whole building, the outer courts, which is open to the worshipers. Now, in this passage, the word that's used is naos. So if you need to mark that, make sure you know this is the word that's used. So when he says the temple, he's talking about the inner temple, the place where God dwells, which is why then in verse 2, it makes sense that he would say what? Don't measure the outer temple. Okay? So what temple? That should, when he says measure the temple, hopefully you all go, wait a minute, there is no temple. It's been destroyed. Right? We've studied this, right? This is part of what we've been there. Okay, so let's go a little history in case you forgot. It was destroyed in 70 A.D. The Roman procurator, Justus Florus, loved money and hated the Jews, and when tax revenues were low, he seized silver from the temple. Of course, for the Jew, this is an outrage. This is a huge offense against them, and so in AD 66, he sends troops in Jerusalem because they're revolting, and they massacre 3,600 citizens, and thus begins the Jewish revolt. Jewish expels and kills Roman troops. Judea and Galilee then follow, and the Jewish revolt begins by overthrowing the Roman stronghold at Masada. Now, I have a kind of overview of Masada here. I got to go up on Masada when I was in Jerusalem. You got that next? There it is. So this is kind of a photo because it's kind of hard to take a picture of Masada because it's so huge. But picture, it's this giant plateau. It is like a city built on top of a flat mountain. Okay? And so the Romans had built a stronghold here, and the Jews actually got in, overthrew the Romans, and then made their own stronghold here. And so it actually has, it's not on this side, I think it's on the other side. There's Herod has a palace up here. So it's a place where if Herod gets in danger, if people get in danger, they can run to Masada, and you can't really, it's very difficult to overthrow Masada. But the Jews did it, and that actually starts the revolt. Celestius Gallus, the Roman governor of the region, marched from Syria with 20,000 soldiers. He besieged Jerusalem for 6 months and failed. He left 6,000 dead Roman soldiers, not to mention weaponry. And of course, then the Jewish defenders picked up. When you leave weapons behind, note the enemy is going to use it. We've even had a recent case of that, have we not? Okay, so we understand that principle pretty well. So Emperor Nero, and by the way, you all should know Nero hated the Jews. Okay, he put them on sport in the Colosseum, had a mockery of killing them. And so Nero sends Vespasian, a decorated general, to quell the Judean rebellion. Vespasian goes, he puts down the Gentiles, then Transjordan, then Idumea. And so he's on his way to Jerusalem. He circles Jerusalem, and before the final victory, Nero dies. And so now Vespasian is in this leadership struggle, because since he's the general, the way Rome worked at the time, typically the best general was the one that got promoted to emperor. And so everybody's like, Vespasian, you need to be the emperor. You need to be emperor. Well, of course, he's in Israel. And so what does he do? He leaves, and he sends his son Titus to conduct the Jewish war. Roman legions surround the city in 70 A.D. When they do get the city, they completely ransack the city and demolish it. They destroy the temple, and in 73 A.D., the stronghold here at Masada then falls. So the Romans take it back. The rebuilding of the temple is required for this verse to take place. Up to this point right here, and we're going to get there, we're going to talk about the temple more in a little bit. Up to this point right here, the temple does not exist. Okay? The matter of fact, Israel doesn't even own the land. So this is a big struggle. So if you're going to, hey, for this to happen, the temple has to be rebuilt. Well, when's that going to happen? Well, we'll find out. The rod is shebet. It's a rod, a staff, a club, a scepter. It's used for smiting, for chastisement, for counting sheep. It's also a symbol of conquest. And we're going to read several passages of scriptures which refer to the rod, and we're going to see some illustrations on this. So let's look first at Psalm 78:55. He also drove out the nations from them and appointed them as an inheritance by measurement, and he had the tribes of Israel dwell in their tents. Now, the tribes of Israel right there, that is the word shebet, the rod. Israel was considered the rod of God. Okay? So several times it's not just, we think rod, and what do you think? A shepherd's staff, something like that. Understand that was true in Scripture, but also Israel was God's rod. Okay? So Jeremiah 10:16. The portion of Jacob is not like these, for he is the fashioner or the maker of everything, and Israel is the tribe or the rod of his inheritance. The Lord of the armies is his name. Jeremiah 51:19. The portion of Jacob is not like these, for he is the fashioner, maker of everything, and the tribe or scepter of his inheritance. The Lord of armies is his name. Boy, did we just read that? Yes, because almost the exact same passage is mentioned twice. And I had to do a double take because I had never caught that before. But it was almost identical. So if he's saying something twice, we probably should pay attention to it. Okay? So in Revelation, the rod is an instrument of chastisement. It's an instrument of chastisement. So we have already read Revelation chapter 2, verse 27. Let's see if we remember it. And he shall rule or shepherd them with a rod of iron, and the vessels of the potter are shattered, as I also have received authority from my Father. Okay, then we get to Revelation 12. We haven't gotten there yet. She gave birth to a son, a male, who is going to rule, a shepherd to all the nations, Gentiles, with a rod of iron. And her child was brought up by God and to his throne. Now, hopefully, you already, just by reading this, kind of understand that verse. Yes? Do you? So, who is she who's giving birth? Mary. Who is her son? Who will rule, right? As a shepherd, right? And the child will be caught up to God at the throne. Okay, so it's a kind of a prelude of Jesus, but there's more to that verse, and we're going to see that when we get there. Chapter 19, verse 15. From his mouth comes a sharp sword, so that with it he may strike down the nations, and he will rule or shepherd them with a rod of iron. And he treads the winepress of the fierce wrath of God the Almighty. Okay? So in Revelations, the rod is a chastisement. And then let's look again. It's also measurements to indicate the preamble to judgment. So it's like the foretelling that judgment is coming. Look at Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 38. Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when the city will be rebuilt for the Lord from the tower of Hanel at the corner to the corner gate. The measuring line will go out farther straight ahead to the hill Garab, and then it will turn to Goah. Okay? Zechariah chapter 2, verse 1. Then I raised my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a man with a measuring line in his hand. So I said, where are you going? And he said to me, to measure Jerusalem, to see how wide it is and how long it is. Now, when it comes to measuring the city, what's he really measuring? Okay, anybody see my Facebook post today? I posted, it's a line from a movie. It says, you have been weighed, measured, and found wanting. Okay? So that's the picture here. It's not like he's going, hey, I want to find out just how long the city is. He's measuring the city. Have you been faithful? He's measuring it, weighing the city. Are you ready? Because it's a prelude to judgment. Okay? It's also a preamble to destruction. When you see the rod, again, this is another idiom. Does it mean that it's always this way? No. But when I see it, I need to think, is it one of these things? So a preamble to destruction. Let's look at Lamentations 2:8. The Lord determined to destroy the wall of the daughter of Zion. He has stretched out a line. He has not restrained his hand from engulfing or destroying. And he has caused rampart and wall to mourn. They have languished together. Look at 2 Kings 21:13. I will stretch over Jerusalem the line. When you see the line is the word you're looking for. That's the same word for rod, okay? Of Samaria and the plummet of the house of Ahab. And I will wipe Jerusalem clean, just as one wipes a bowl, wiping it and turning it upside down. Isaiah chapter 34, verse 8. For the Lord has a day of vengeance, a year of retribution for the controversy and the cause of Zion. Edom's streams, or its streams, will be turned into pitch, and its loose earth into brimstone, and its land will become burning pitch. It will not be engulfed night or day. Its smoke will go up forever. From generation to generation, it will be desolate. None will pass through it forever and ever. But the pelican or the owl, the jackdaw, whichever word that might, it's, again, Jewish words, one word has several meanings, so you don't know exactly which one. And the hedgehog will possess it, and the great horned owl and raven will dwell in it. And he will stretch over it the line of formlessness, or the line of desolation, and the plumb line of emptiness. Amos chapter 7, verse 8. And the Lord said to me, what do you see, Amos? And I said, a plumb line. And the Lord said, behold, I am about to put a plumb line in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not spare them any longer. Do we have any builders here? What's a plumb line? To make sure that everything's straight. When I went to El Salvador, we built a church, and one of the things we had to do is run a plumb line, and it took forever to get the plumb line straight. Here's the thing: if you don't get the plumb line straight, the rest of the building is off. It literally is one of the most important, because it marks, is everything flat? Is it center? Are you building a straight? Is it the right angle? And so here, what you see is, listen, I'm running a plumb line. In other words, are you on the right path? Because if you're not, destruction's coming. Okay? Let's look. It also begins, remember, judgment begins at the house of God. Yes? 1 Peter 4:17. For it is time for judgment to begin from or with the household of God. And if it begins from or with us first, what will the outcome be for those who do not obey the gospel of God? Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. Now, if your brother sins against you, go and correct or show him in private between you and him alone. If he listens, you will have gained your brother. If he does not listen, take one or two more with you, so that on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word or every matter may be confirmed. And if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, he is to be with you as Gentile and a tax collector. In other words, cast out. It needs to be fixed here. It needs to be fixed here first. And if you can't fix it here, what do? See you. Okay? So it is also, when you see rod, it's a measurement in preparation for the Lord's coming to dwell upon the earth. That's a lot of different scenarios we see for this one word, rod. But it has this very important meaning. It's preparation, it's getting ready, and this one is a preparation for the Lord's reign. Let's look at Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 1. In the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th of the month, on the 14th year after the city was taken, on this very day, the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me there. In the visions, God, he had brought me into the land of Israel and set me on a very high mountain. And on it to the south, there was something like the structure of a city. So he brought me there. And behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze, with a thread of flax and a measuring reed or rod in his hand. And he was standing in the gateway. And the man said to me, Son of man, see with your eyes, hear with your ears, and set your heart or pay attention to all that I'm going to show you. For you have been brought here in order to show it to you. Declare to the house of Israel all that you see. Let's look at Zechariah chapter 2, verse 1. Now, we've read the first 2 verses already. We're going to start and read them again, but I want you to see them in context of what else is happening here. So then I raised my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a man with a measuring line in his hand. So I said, where are you going? And he said to me, to measure Jerusalem, to see how wide it is and how long it is. And behold, the angel who had been speaking with me was going out, and another angel was going out to meet him. And he said to him, run, speak to that young man there, saying, Jerusalem will be inhabited as open country because of the multitude of people and cattle within it. But I, declare the Lord, will be a wall of fire to her on all sides, and I will be the glory in her midst. You there, flee from the land of the north, declares the Lord, because I have spread you out like the four winds of the heavens, declares the Lord. You, Zion, escape, you who are living with the daughter of Babylon. For the Lord of armies says this, after glory he has sent me against the nations that plunder you, for the one who touches you touches the apple of his eye. For behold, I'm going to wave my hand over them, so they will be the plunder of their slaves. Then you will know the Lord of armies have sent me. Shout for joy and rejoice, daughter of Zion, for behold, I am coming to dwell in your midst, declares the Lord. And many nations will join themselves to the Lord that day and will become my people. And then I will dwell in your midst, and you will know the Lord of armies has sent me to you. And the Lord will inherit or possess Judah as his portion of the Holy Land, and will again choose Jerusalem. Hush, or be silent, all flesh, all mankind, before the Lord, for he has roused himself from his holy dwelling. Now pause just for a minute, look at that verse. What's he referring to? Any guesses? Second coming. That is a prelude to say. He's saying Jesus is going to come and he's going to dwell with you. So this is a prelude to he's foreshadowing the second coming. Now, it also foreshadowed, did Jesus come already once? Yes, Jesus came and he dwelt with you. But this particular one is, yes, he's not just coming, but he's coming to rule, to reign. You're going to understand. You're going to live in his presence. Okay? So, who's commanded to measure? John is. John is commanded to measure. Now, it's sometimes difficult for us to remember this, or sometimes we forget. When the Bible was written, there were no chapter markers, okay, or verses. That was put in later so we could identify passages, okay? When it was written, it was a letter, and there wasn't a Mark's writing, he goes, verse 3. Okay, he didn't do that, okay? That was added by us later. So, it seems, it's possible, that the angel who had been speaking at the end of chapter 10 is the one who's speaking in chapter 11. Okay, because that's the one who's speaking to John. And we look at John's perspective. It's from earth, okay? The temple is an earthly temple, the rebuilt temple. The Old Testament prophets saw other men measuring, okay? We just read it, right? I saw a man measuring. I saw a man with a plumb line. I saw a man. Well, here, John is instructing, you do the measuring. He's told to measure the temple, the inner court, the holy place, the Holy of Holies. The act of measuring signified that the area belongs to God in some special way. Okay? It's, if you will, it's an evaluation of property. Before you buy a house, what do you typically do? You get a property adjuster out, right? They come and they do measurements and they determine, hey, this is the value of the property. Okay? God is telling John, hey, listen, I want you to measure the property because it's mine and I'm coming to get it. Which should be for us, we should remember this, because what was the scroll? Typically, remember the 7 seals? What was it symbolize? What? A deed to property. It's a deed. So the scroll's been unrolled. God is coming to claim what's his. Measuring in the Bible is a symbol of preparation for either destruction or preservation. We already read that. Zechariah 2, a man is seen measuring Jerusalem. Ezekiel 40, a man measures the temples of the future kingdom. In Numbers 35:5, Moses is instructed to measure the temple for the Levites. In Psalm 66, God would measure out an area for judgment. We'll read those 2 passages in just a moment. God would permit Gentile dominion and persecution of Israel, but he will judge her persecutors just as he always has. Okay? So remember, God allows Israel to be overrun. And why does he allow Israel to be overrun? They reject him. Okay, remember this. In the Old Testament, Israel was given command, right? Don't follow other gods. Don't intermarry with unbelieving neighbors. Don't do this. And what do? They do it anyway. And because of that, they were subject to judgment, right? Nothing changes in the New Testament. Jesus comes and he says, I'm here. And they go, no. It's a rejection again of what they've already done all through the Old Testament. He says, because of this, now you're going to be overrun again. So God is the judge of man's worship, man's character, and all must give an account to him. And we see that in Romans 3:23. So let's look at Numbers 35:5. You shall also measure outside the city on the east side 2,000 cubits, on the south side 2,000 cubits, on the west side 2,000 cubits, on the north side 2,000 cubits. So what does that make it? Square. Yes, thank you for your math, people. Very good. With the city in the center, this shall become theirs as pasture lands for the cities. Psalm 66. God has spoken in his holiness, or in his sanctuary. I will triumph. I will divide up Shechem and measure out the valley of Succoth. Romans chapter 3, verse 23. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Let's go now, and I want to look at verse 2 a little bit closer. You ready? Here we go. Revelation chapter 11, verse 2. Leave out the courtyard, which is the outside of the temple, and do not measure it, because it has been given to the nations, and they will trample the holy city for 42 months. So he says, leave out. Okay, key word, leave out. That's your next two blanks there. Leave out. Okay, what are we leaving out? We're leaving out the outer courtyard. Okay, the word in the Greek is ekbalo. And I'm sorry I did not give you the pronunciation in your notes. Apologize there. But it's interesting. Are you ready? Read this with me because this was fun. It means to cast out, to throw, to banish, or to bring forth or produce. Now pause for just a moment. Those do not sound so. To cast out, right? But to produce. So follow with me as we go through the definition here. Okay? With or without violence. So when it's used, it can be with or without violence. This is the context. It means to drive out, to cast out, to expel, to compel one to depart, to draw out with force. Draw out with force. I produce. Drawing out, okay? Or pushing. It causes someone or something to move to its intended goal. Now, if it's used, it's always used without violence in certain circumstances, and that when it's used that way, it's to draw out or to extract, to bring forth, to leave out, to not receive, to leave somewhere with force which cannot be resisted. Okay? Now they sound very opposite, but when you think about it, you're drawing out, push, drawing out, pull, if that helps. Okay? So, he is saying, in this case, what's been happened? He's saying, I want you to leave out, and I want you to, if the word literally is cast out, okay, that's the picture that we're given here. Don't include them. Exclude them, okay? So the Gentiles have taken over Jerusalem, which we see in Luke, and we understand it's until what happens in Zechariah chapter 14. The holy city. Which holy city are we talking about? We're talking about Rome? Right? Jerusalem. Okay? There's only one holy city in the Bible, and it's what? Jerusalem. Okay? Not the Vatican. Sorry. No other city is designated that way. So let's look at Luke chapter 21-24. And they will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led captive into the nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. When's the times of the Gentiles? After the tribulation, after this point. He's foreshadowing all the way till what's coming. Okay? Zechariah 14:1. Behold, a day is coming for the Lord when the spoils taken from you will be divided among you. For I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle. And the city will be taken, the houses will be plundered, the women will be raped, and half the city will be exiled. But the rest of the people will not be eliminated from the city. Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fights on a day of battle. And on that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which is in front of Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives will be split in its middle from east to west, forming a very large valley. Half of the mountain will move toward the north, the other half will move toward the south. And you will flee by the valley of my mountains. For the valley of the mountains will reach you as Zul. Yes, you will flee just as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, the king of Judah. Then the Lord, my God, will come, and all the holy ones with him. Now, what's that foreshadowing to? That's all the way to the millennium. We're not even there. Like, we haven't even got there in Revelation. He's saying, hey, listen, Jesus is coming back, and when he does, he's going to split the road, and guess who's coming with him? We are. Nehemiah chapter 11, verse 1. Now the leaders of the people lived in Jerusalem, but the rest of the people cast lots to bring out 10 to live in Jerusalem, the holy city, while 9/10 remain in the other cities. Isaiah 52:1. Awake, awake, clothe yourself in your strength, Zion. Clothe yourself with your beautiful garments, Jerusalem, the holy city. For the uncircumcised and the unclean will no longer come into you. Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people in your holy city, to bring an end or finish the wrongdoing, to seal up, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for guilt, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up visions and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. All a foreshadowing for what's coming. All of them are talking about what is coming and what we're dealing with now. So we have this half-week designation, okay? You've got half week, which is, if you remember our study where we took a couple weeks and looked at Daniel, we understood that the half week in Daniel is what? 3.5 years, right? Which is also, we're going to see in just a moment when we get to verse 3, it's also the same time that the two witnesses. So this is the most documented period of time in the Bible. The Old Testament, the New Testament, they all talk about it. And so it's important that we understand it. It's important that we pay attention. I'm sure once it happens, we're all going to go, now it makes sense. Now I understand all the different things that was said about it. But we still don't get it now. We still have people that disagree on it. It's amazing. The most documented time in the Bible, we still can't agree on what's going to happen. It's more definitely marked for literal interpretation than the limits of the time of future judgment placed in the earth during the millennium. The literalness of the fulfillment of the 69 weeks of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 25, is a guarantee of the fulfillment of the 69 weeks in Daniel. 25 is a guarantee of the 70th week. So it guarantees that. We're going to read Daniel in just a moment. So half of the 70th week of the years, we have 1,260 days, 42 months. Is that the first half, the second half? And then you see the words time times the dividing of time. Now this one's hard because for us in the English language, we only really have one word that does this. And it'd be the English word both. So it's a word, it's a plural word, but it means, so you would understand if I said time, you think singular, yes? Times, you think plural. But it can also be the one in between for the Jew, okay? So if I said it like this, I had all my friends over to the house. Both of them showed up. Do you understand? Okay, so there's this defining that the word both kind of fits in between the two. And so that's, when you see the word time, it's dual. It's a dual purpose. It's a dual meaning. And it's used in years. Let's look at Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. So you are to know and understand that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah, the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with the streets and the moat, even in times of distress. So Daniel says the temple's going to be built again. And so we have to take this literally. The rebuilding of the temple. Jesus says it's going to happen in Matthew. Paul talks about it in 2 Thessalonians. and John in Revelation. So let's look at those passages. We just read the one in Revelation. Let's look at Matthew and 2 Thessalonians. Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, or the reader is to understand, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Whoever is on the rooftop must not go down to get things out of the house, and whoever's in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. But woe to those women who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. Moreover, pray that when you flee, it will not be in the winter or on a Sabbath. For then there will be a great tribulation, such as not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will again. And if those days had not been cut short, no life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. So Jesus is talking about not just the rebuilding of the temple, but he's talking about the time of the great tribulation, which we're going to be getting to. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. No one is to deceive you in any way, for it will not come unless the falling away from the faith, or apostasy is the word there, comes first. And the man of lawlessness, by the way, who's the man of lawlessness? Not just Satan, Antichrist, okay? The man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above everyone who is called God, or every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. Okay? So again, we understand in reading through this, the temple is going to be built, but, let's hear it. The temple of God. Let's look at the temple of God, and then I'll make that statement. So there are some names for the temple of God, so I want to make sure we all understand when you see them in Scripture, they're referring to what part of the temple or to what temple. The tabernacle. Okay, by the way, some of those comments I have are not in your notes, so if you want to jot them down, you can. The tabernacle, this is Exodus, okay? That's the temple in Exodus. You remember the tabernacle? Yes? As they were wandering in the wilderness, what they have to do? They'd have to pack up the temple and have to carry it with them, right? Then they get through and into the promised land, and now they can actually build a temple. And so you have Solomon's temple. And this was what they will call the first temple, okay? If you're reading, you're studying, and they say the first temple, they're referring to Solomon's temple. By the way, Solomon's temple has never been matched before. It is the most beautiful temple. It was absolute remember, Solomon was wealthy because David acquired all the wealth, right? Acquired some of the wealth at least. Acquired all this, but God said, hey, you can't build the temple. You've been a man of war. So Solomon, his son, builds the temple. And of course, Solomon uses all of this thing to build this fascinating monument to God. Then you have Zerubbabel's temple. This is about 70 years later. It would be under Ezra. If you're reading your Old Testament in Ezra, they're under Persian rule. The Jews have been kind of scattered because of Nebuchadnezzar and all that's happened with Syria. And Zerubbabel goes back and he builds the temple. But it's a very, very pale comparison to Solomon's temple. Matter of fact, if you're reading there, you'll see that the people who were like young children and saw Solomon's temple, and then they're older and they see this temple, they wept because of it's not even close to the temple of what it was. And then, so that, we would say that's the second temple, but it's not. Okay? Because they don't refer to that as the second temple. They refer to Herod's temple as the second temple. So Herod comes along, and Herod says, listen, I want to build the temple. I want to make the people like me. So he takes Zerubbabel's temple and basically kind of does some work to it. Okay? Makes it a little bit bigger, adds some things to make it a little bit more fancy, tries to upgrade it. So they would say that is the second temple. Then you have the third temple. Third temple we haven't seen yet. Because remember, what happened to the second temple? We just talked about it. 70 AD, the Romans came in and they leveled it. Okay? So that temple's destroyed. So the third temple nothing's happened yet. Matter of fact, we would probably even say that this is, whether it's going to be built in our lifetime, or is it possible that this is the temple. Sorry, my watch is beeping and I don't want it to go off, so I'm going to mute it. It's possible that this is built during our lifetime, and then that's leading into it. But I would say this. If the temple's going to be built and we all saw it, what we all immediately know. Get ready, baby, okay? And no one knows the day or the time. So I tend to say this. I don't think the temple's going to be the construction will be started until after the rapture. Because remember, the Antichrist, when he comes, he's going to have to appease both Jew and Arab. So somehow, some way, he's going to build the temple in such a way that they're both happy. How will he do that? I don't know. But I tend to say that it's later. Some people disagree, but that's my personal take on it. So anyway, the third temple we haven't seen yet because that happens during the Antichrist and the tribulation. Okay, the Millennial Temple, okay, Jesus is going to restore and rebuild the temple when he comes during the millennial reign. So that's going to be a whole nother. Will it be I think it's going to be better than Solomon's temple. I think it's going to be, it's Jesus. He's the best architecture there is, right? And so that temple's going to be, and matter of fact, if you read the last 9 chapters of Ezekiel, it describes some of that. So you may want to put that on your mark. Ezekiel's last 9 chapters deal with that. And then in heaven, there's no temple. Why is there no temple in heaven? Because we're with God and God's presence is everywhere. Remember, the temple is this earthly place to signify the place where God dwells. Okay? And so, but in heaven, he's with us. There is no need for a temple. You've got a picture there on your notes there. That is probably one of the, there you go. Probably one of the best artist's rendering that we know of what Solomon's temple may have looked like. Or the second temple. I'm sorry, I think that's the second temple. So again, we don't know for sure because it was destroyed. Okay? But from records and from things, that's why we think. Now, go to your next page. I'm going to walk through a couple maps with you because I want you to understand what we're going to talk about here. So the question now is, where will the temple be? Okay? So, Dave, I think you can go to the next one. Okay. Currently, this is the Temple Mount. Okay? Have you all seen pictures of Jerusalem? You understand what you're seeing here? Okay? The gold object there is called the Dome of the Rock. Okay? That is, that whole area. Okay, if you could see the wall, do you see the walls in the bottom? Okay? All of that, it's smack dab in the city, in the middle of the city of Jerusalem, and it's under Arab control. Okay? So Jews are not allowed to enter. They cannot go anywhere. Go ahead and go to the next picture there. Okay? So if you'll notice, let's see here the best way. So the left side of the picture there, where you see the 2 trees on the left side, kind of on the top of the wall. You see that there? Just above that tree, you'll see kind of a flat area and then like a wall that's going up. Everybody see that? Do I have here? I got a mic stand. This is my pointer. Right here. See that right there? Okay? That is the Western Wall. Okay? Some people would use the term Wailing Wall. That's not really a correct term. The Western Wall is the right term. I got to go to the Western Wall. Got to put my piece of paper in the wall. It was very cool. It's just a great experience. You can go there and you pray, and it's like, remember, okay, for the Jew, that's the closest they can get to God. Because for them, where's God? On the mountain. And they can't get there. Which, again, if you remember, we talked about this before, is a huge problem into their theology. And I didn't even think about it until I went there. But they talked about how currently those Jews, they can't get to sacrifice. So for them, where's hope? The place that I'm supposed to go to sacrifice for forgiveness of sin, the place I'm supposed to meet with God, I can't get to. So for them, so that's the closest they can get to. So if you'll notice, you'll see some letters. I don't know if you can see them very well. You might be able to see them better on your paper. You'll see an A at the very top of the thing. You see it? A B, a C, and a D. Okay? So the A is what's called the Northern Conjecture. The B is what's called the traditional view. The C is the southern conjecture, I'm going to call it southern A. And the D is southern B. Everybody see those? Okay, I'm going to walk you through what each of them means. Okay? So, does everybody understand the importance of the idea of the temple for the Jew? Extremely important. I mean, extremely, because for them, for us, it's like, guys, God's with you. You can ask forgiveness of sins. They're like, no, we have to go give sacrifice. And we need atonement. Okay? So, traditional view. Here's the traditional view. Okay? It's B on that map. Just if you need to go back and forth to the map. The temple has been traditionally assumed to have been located where the Muslim Dome of the Rock is located. Most experts currently doubt this location and suspect it was either north or south. Okay? Traditional view is that's where I need to go. But after discovery, and if you remember this, I think I told you, I can't remember the exact number. I tried to find it in my notes. I believe it's somewhere, I think it's 10%, that Israel only actually excavates 10% of their archaeology because they always want to leave something for future generations. Which is like, okay, that's nice, but it's like, come on, guys, there's answers. We need answers, and they're right there. So every year, new information comes out. It's like they find something, it's like, oh, that's there. Well, that means this is here. So as they discover things, sometimes our view changes. So that's what's happened here. The northern conjecture. It's based on alignment, and this is probably, for some of you, you're like, Pastor, I have no idea what you're talking about here. I put it in your notes so that if you want to do more study, you want to look at things, you know what we're talking about. It's alignment with the Golden Gate, certain rock outcroppings. The author, who is Dr. Kaufman, believes the actual site of the Holy Holies and the Ark of the Covenant was at the Dome of the Tablets, also known as the Dome of the Spirits. The conjecture suggests that the Dome of the Rock is actually in the outer courts. Okay? If you look at your map, there's kind of a picture that was drawn on there. I know it might be hard to see, but I tried to do it in such a way that I tried to make it big enough that you could see it. So, Tuvi Sevgiv, I probably butchered his name there, but the southern conjecture A, okay? The southern conjecture A. You could see in your notes how the placement of that one is. Again, why the south dome of the rock is likely. The Huldah gates, according to the Mishnah, the difference in the heights between the Huldah gates and the Holy Holies was approximately 10 meters, with about a 39-degree between the entrance of the Temple Mount and the levels of the temple. The Dome of the Rock proposals require 20 meters and an 80-degree separation. Current assumptions of the tunnels is not mentioned in ancient sources, but it suggests a lower, more southern location. The question of where was Antonia's tower? Antonia was located to the north, according to ancient sources, on a hill about 25 meters high. The current El Omri school building is on a rock only 5 meters high. And so for many strategic and other considerations, it's doubtful that this was the actual location of Antonia. The moat, according to ancient sources, the Antonia and the Temple Mount were adjacent to each other. So the moat would be to the north of the tower for protection, placing Antonia where the Dome of the Rock stands today. The view from the north. Joseph Flavia describes the fact that the Bitsa Hill was located north of the Temple Mount and obscured the view of the temple from the north. Okay, in 2018, Norma Robertson came out with a southern conjecture. I personally like this one. Listen, we don't know which one it is, but I kind of like this one for a couple different reasons, and you're going to find out why in a second. So what can the location of the Acra tell us? A huge fort that's called the Acra Tower has been built by the Grecians, cutting off the temple from the city of David. It was once located south of the south wall on Solomon's temple compound. It was built between the city of David and the temple, cutting the city off from the temple. The ruins of the fort and tower have been uncovered in the Gavita parking lot built on the shelf of the Tyrian Valley just north of the old city of David. By the way, the ruins were discovered in 2015, so not too long ago is some of this. The temple, pre-Herod, had to be close enough to look into it from the top of the tower. That's not possible if the temple was on the peak of the mount, where the Dome of the Rock platform. The temple had to be lower, down from the peak of the mount, down on the hill Ophel. So the fact so far is the eastern ridge had 3 levels: the city of David, the Ophel Hill, and the peak of the mount, which is now covered by the Dome of the Rock. The eastern ridge pre-Herod was at least 450 feet thinner west to east than the Temple Mount is today, cutting off 150 feet from the west side and 300 from the east side. And the excavation in 2015 of the Araka demands the tower location of the temple. By the way, so let's pause for just a moment. Oh man, I just forgot what I was going to say too. It was good. Oh, so a lot of what has happened is this. Up until probably 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, 3D mapping wasn't as technical as it is now. So they're actually able to go in from the side. If you remember the picture, the wall is up, and then go in from the side and do thermal imaging and 3D imaging and all kinds of other stuff and figure out the topography of the area and figure out what was going on. Remember, and this is sometimes when the Romans sacked the city, and this was fascinating to me because if you ever go to Jerusalem, you have to remember, it's like, yeah, I'm walking where Jesus walked. You are, but the Romans sacked the city and built a city on top of the city. So Jerusalem is technically under the city. Okay, the old, and when you go, you'll walk through, and we went to the what was it? The pools of Bethsaida, I think, is where we were. And you'd go and you'd stand and you'd look down, and it'd literally be like 2 stories. That, okay, that area down there, that's actually biblical times. The next level was after it was sacked the first time, and the next level is when it was sacked the last time. So the city has actually been built on and built on. So that's why when it comes to 3D mapping and some of the other technology, we've been able to go, okay, well, if the temple looked like this, it wouldn't sit on the hill right because of the elevation, because of how so there's a lot of things that have come out recently which has been able to clarify this. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to fill in the last blank for you, and then I want you can put the notes down and look at your screens, okay? Because I'm going to go back and forth from my notes to some other things, okay? Here we go. So background history. Here's what we need to know. Some background history. By the way, at last count, the last count I could find, I looked again today, I could not find a new count. But 63 of the you can write this down if you want to. Sorry. The 63 of the 103 implements of the temple have been created by the Jews. So remember, everything they had was destroyed or lost. Okay? There has been, within the last, probably since the late 70s, early 80s, the Jews have been rebuilding all the ornaments of the temple. Some of them are on display. Some of them are hidden. Matter of fact, you can go online and you can find they have a giant menorah. I mean, it's just fascinating. But everything they're building into the specifications of the Old Testament. So they are preparing for the third temple. And they are building all the elements because when it's built, they're going to be able to go, it's all in. And so, unfortunately, you and I know it's not going to turn out how they think, right? They're going to get the temple, and for a period of time, it's going to look great, and then all of a sudden, the temple's going to be desecrated, and they're all going to go, no, we miss Jesus. So, a background history. So, remember, we had the 70 AD, we had the fall of Jerusalem. 132 AD, the Bar Kokhba revolt. This is all in your notes, so you can put your notes away now. In 135 AD, the Romans regained Jerusalem, and they completely destroy the city. The city is built on top of the city, so you have a city on a city. So here's what I want you to pay attention to. Go ahead, you have the picture of okay. So this is your typical Roman temple, okay? So you have, if you would enter it from the bottom right, you'd go up. So you'd go up through the thing, you'd go into a rotunda area, then you'd walk into that through the courtyard, and then the basilica, which is the temple, okay? And so if you remember, when we talked about, go all the way back, nearly, I'm going to say probably our 10th lesson together, when we were talking, we have to go back away. When we were talking about the different cities, and we talked about how there was a calling out, and we talked about some of the temples. So this should kind of go, I remember kind of talking about these. So The temple of Jupiter was the one that was built on top of the Jewish site. You can go to the next one. We're going to go to a bird's eye view, okay? So this is a typical, and would have been the typical temple. So you have the propylaea. I mess that word up all the time. Number 3, so that's the entrance, okay? Everybody follow me? Okay, then you'd walk into the hexagonal court. By the way, so typically for the courts, I wrote this down, let me see. So it's usually a polygon. It's either hexagon, octagon, or a circle. Okay, so that hexagonal court, it might be a circle, but typically all the Roman courts were the same. So that you walk in the entryway, you'd have an outer court, if you will. Then you'd have the large court. In the center of the large court would be a statue to whoever the temple was to. So if this one was Jupiter, you'd have a statue to Jupiter. Or if it was Diana, you'd have a statue. And so and then you have the temple on the inside. Follow me? Okay. So the esquatron statue, of Hadrian was installed in the large court. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is back to our photo. Okay, this is why I like the Southern B idea. Okay, this is, help me out, make sure you can see where we're at. Okay, let me get my pointer out here. I'm gonna have to extend it. Okay, no one's that tall. Did I tighten it the right way? Okay. That's the Dome of the Rock. Yes? Okay. This would be the Western Wall. Yes? Okay. Everybody knows where we're at. Okay. So if the B is correct, remember, Rome would have laid out their temple on top of the Jewish temple. Go ahead, Dave. Oh, I turned it sideways to help us out. I forgot about that. Everybody still see in the center? You see the dome? Hopefully that everybody see that, okay? So if, you got to remember, that's north, okay? Okay, here we go. Go ahead, Dave. That would be how the Roman temple would have laid out. So, the entry would have been to the south, okay? You'd have come up, and then, yeah. By the way, the Dome of the Rock has been rebuilt like several times. So has the building to the left. But the courtyard would have been there. The temple's to the left. The circle, the round thing, that would have been the outer, their outer courtyard. So the outer courtyard is the Dome of the Rock. Inner courtyard, then the temple. Okay, follow me. All right. So if it's the lower B, it actually kind of makes sense, because remember, the Romans come in, they wipe out the Jewish temple, they would have used the foundation, built on top of it, right? Of course, then after Rome gets kicked out, the world kind of converts to Christianity, so Christians come in, they kind of do their thing, and then what happens? Then the Arabs come in, and they clean house, and they would have done the exact same thing. They would have built on the foundation that was already there, which is why the Dome of the Rock might be on that outer court, okay? Now here's what's kind of cool, I think. If that's true, for the Jewish temple, okay, the temple would be the building, okay? But then what would have been that way to the north of the building? Because that would have been the outer court for the temple, for the Jewish temple. What do you have? What's next? The inner court, which means smack dab in the middle, would have been the Holy of Holies. Which is interesting, because on top of the Holy of Holies would have been built the statue for Rome. And today, right now, it's the Al-Qas fountain. For the Jew, it's very important that you don't walk on the Holy of Holies. But it's interesting, because if this, well, I don't know if it is, but if this is the case, that would have meant that up to this day, the Holy of Holies would have been preserved. because of what was set there, so no one would have walked on that place. It's just an interesting conjecture, possibility. It does make you think a little bit. So again, the 2nd century, the Rome takeover. The 3rd century is when Christianity does, and the 6th and 7th century is when the Muslim world does. So it's just an idea. Again, we do not know because there's still things to find. The other thing, they're all 3 ideas are defendable. They're plausible. Probably the traditional view is less plausible than the other 3, but only if we get in there and we do archaeological investigation. The problem is this: Muslims are not allowing anyone in. Matter of fact, up to this point, Muslims have destroyed over 18,000 tons of artifacts. They are trying everything in their power to prove that the Jews never owned, never were there. Because remember, their goal is that they're saying, no, this place has always been Muslim and Jews are never here. So that's why they're trying to get rid of all the artifacts, because they don't want the Jews to come back in. And so it's still a struggle. So only time will tell. And as more and more things are revealed, excavated, found, only then will we kind of get a better and better picture. But you can see why I kind of like this idea that, which also is interesting because then it means this too. The Jews are actually closer than they think to the temple. Because for them, they're so far away. But here, they're just a little bit closer. Okay? Next week, verse 3, 2 witnesses. Sorry, I know, but I had to get through this. Any questions? Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah, anything they can do. Yeah. Trying to remember, I believe it's west, I think. The Jews always want to be buried facing the west or facing the east. I forget. They always want to be buried in the same direction because that's the direction they believe Jesus is coming back. So they want to catch him in the air. It's interesting. So, all right, let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, thank you again for allowing us to have just some more insight into your word. I pray that you would help us to understand and continue to seek what is true, and help us to realize that there are people in our lives, in our world, that need to know you. God, help us to share our faith because we want them to know the goodness of God and how great you are. Thank you, Lord. It's in your name we pray. Everybody said? Amen. Have a wonderful week.